Huge news on the election front. Lots of things happened yesterday, and I want to continue to say that voting is really important because there are consequences to who you elect. And we've seen that over the last year. We've seen that. We see it a lot. Anyway, we just want to look at what happened yesterday because yesterday was, I believe, a referendum on what has been happening in the country for the last several months, and people are beginning to push back. The regular, normal people like you, like me, families, moms, dads, they're starting to show up at the polls and say, this is not working and we need something different. So we're going to talk about a few of those instances today that I think have merit. Welcome to Church Public. I'm Matt Odegaard. Let's get started. Well, again, welcome back to Church Public. Thank you so much for joining me here today. As always, you can check out more at churchpublic.com. You can find me on all of the social medias at Church Public and, of course, any of the podcast platforms, which is probably where you're listening to this right now. If you have a moment, go ahead and go give a like, a review. It really helps for people to know about this. And if you want to share it with somebody, if this is helpful, again, what I'm trying to do is help you to follow Jesus and engage in the public square. We want to do both things. For too long, the church has just been about discipleship or whatever, and they're too internal. One of my old friends used to say it was just navel gazing. You just stare down at your belly button forever and don't really look up and see what's around. We need to stop that. We need to not give up either way. We need to both look at Jesus. The post that I did this morning, the Bible verse that I read was one of my favorites, Matthew 6:33. Seek first the kingdom of God and all will be added. Everything else. We first have to seek Jesus with all of our heart and soul and mind and strength, just like he has said. But it doesn't end there. We have to love our neighbor, which means we need to know what is going on in this crazy world, and we need to be culturally aware of how to engage with these things. I'm encouraged by yesterday because people, I believe, are becoming aware of what is going on around them, and they're not standing for all of this craziness, especially in the state of Virginia. We're going to get specifically to the state of Virginia because it was a huge upset in the state of Virginia in just a moment. But as a backstory to recall, Virginia has been the hot seat in all of America for school issues like critical race theory being in the school, whereas many people, even today, this morning, I saw a post that said, you guys keep fighting about this, but critical race theory is not taught in any school in Virginia or America, which is just a bald-faced lie. It is taught. I've been through why it's taught, and it's not like you sign up for CRT 101 in a college class and they start delving into the different terms and ideologies. The terms themselves are the things that you need to watch out for so that you know when this ideology is presented. It comes at you backwards, and that's why it's hard to understand. It's hard to talk about. It's hard to even see sometimes. But now I think people are beginning to know what the terms are, and when they hear them, they go, oh, I don't want that for my children. And you see that based on the voting. We're going to look at that in a minute in terms of what the results were. It is important to note. In addition, in Virginia, there was a terrible story of a boy dressed like a girl who went in the girls' bathroom and sexually assaulted a girl in the girls' bathroom, and then was either charged or not charged. The story is a little bit fuzzy, but released back into another school where this individual, a boy dressed like a girl, did it to another girl at another school in another sexual assault. This is terrible. And the school board covered it up. The superintendent apparently, allegedly, was part of this. There's a lot going on there, and parents have had enough of it. And you see that, again, reflected in the polls. Also, Virginia, it should be noted, in its proximity to Washington, D.C. is a very important state. It's very important because many people from Washington, D.C., I may have just said Washington State. What I meant is Washington, D.C., they live there. People from Washington, D.C. live there, and there are many Democrats who live there. And Virginia is very, very blue according to voting records. For instance, in the last presidential election, Biden won the state by something like 10 points, which is a huge margin, which makes what I'm going to tell you about this election all the more interesting and, I think, encouraging in terms of where this country is going if we, the people, and the parents and the families continue to stand up and say, your left-wing ideological cultural Marxist values are not what we want. We want to go back to better values. Okay, so we're going to look at some of those things here. Let me just read some of these articles for you. In the Virginia election, it has been called for Youngkin. Youngkin is the Republican underdog, or whatever you want to say. Accordingly, he should not have won in terms of the Democrat presentation of this. And the Democrats had everyone out to help them. I mean, Biden was there and gave a speech. I believe Kamala was there. Obama even said some things. I mean, they brought out every big gun they had to get people out for Terry McAuliffe. I told you the story the other day that Kamala made this video message that was played in over 300 churches, which probably is illegal according to according to nonprofit status, but side issue. At any rate, even in the past few days, as the polls have been nearing, even in that, it's been a win in terms of people saying, no, I'm not going to vote for somebody to bring in these. Again, it's about ideology. And we know as believers that this is really about theology. It's really about, what do you believe? What are the standards? What are the morals that we want to have as people? Do we want to allow people who want to identify as other genders into bathrooms? Do we want to allow people into the school to say that everyone of a certain color is racist, everyone of another color cannot be racist? And I'm not saying don't teach history. Of course not. History is one of my favorite subjects. I like teaching the good, the bad, and the ugly of history. But when you use that history, or in some cases, like the 1619 Project, false history, to say that a certain group of people is eternally condemned because of their skin color, you've moved beyond history. You've moved into, well, actual racism, because that is disparaging people based on traits that they cannot change. We all used to know this was really bad, but apparently some of us have lost that awareness. So Youngkin has apparently won, and this is fantastic good news. As I mentioned, Biden won by around 10 points last year, so this is a very fast change, and this is what we need to know. I know some of you are not super political, perhaps, or get bored by these details, but these are important things, and I'll try to just give you the highlights, because the highlights help us understand, perhaps, again, a little bit of hope here, perhaps the way some people in the country are going and saying, we're not going to have this anymore. And so Glenn Youngkin defeated Terry McAuliffe. Again, Terry McAuliffe, who was the governor, should have been, previously was the governor, should have been an easy win in a blue state that was blue last year. This should have been an easy win. The fact that it wasn't a win, the fact that it was even close, is a referendum not only on Virginia, as I mentioned, its proximity to Washington, D.C., but I believe, and a referendum on education. I think that's the big thing. It is a referendum on parents and moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas even are saying, no, we're not having this kind of education in our school. That's a really big deal. But there's another piece to this too, and I think it is a referendum on Biden. When you see inflation on basically everything through the roof, when you see the Afghanistan situation, which is still a disaster. I haven't talked about it for a couple of weeks because there's so much else going on, but there are still Americans stuck there. If you didn't know that, there's still Americans stuck there. There's still hostages there. There are still atrocities, murders, and worse happening there every single day. I don't have time to report on all of them. You can go look, but it is a disaster, and Biden is responsible for that, period. There are oil prices going through the roof. There are so many different things, and plus all of the policies, right? All of the policies for abortion, pro-abortion that this administration is going through. There was a story about Biden meeting with the Pope. I wanted to talk about that today, but there's so much going on in the voting that I want to talk about that instead. But it is an interesting story nonetheless, that I'll give you like the 30-second clip if you missed it, that he went to meet with the Pope basically, I think, to ask the Pope if he would stamp, like approve Biden's performance or stance or religion, especially as it relates to Biden's stance on being pro-abortion. And the end result was Biden came out, not the Pope, but Biden came out and said, the Pope said I'm good. I mean, essentially that's it. Like that's a little bit of paraphrase, but you can go and read it. Essentially, that's what Biden said. He said, I talked to the Pope, guys. I'm good. We're good with it. He's good with me. We're all good. Like, does anybody believe this? If you did something really bad, just imagine you did something really bad and your parents were like, okay, you need to go talk to the principal. So you go and talk to the principal and you say, well, I went and talked to the principal and the principal said, we're covered. It's good. We took care of it. I'm fine now. If you, the parent, looked at your kid and went, I'm going to need a little bit more. Like, I'm going to need a note from the principal saying that you actually talked to them or that you actually talked about this or that they actually said what you say they're going to say. Like, does anybody believe that Biden went to the Pope and the Pope was like, yep, you're good. Doesn't matter what sins you're committing. It doesn't matter, like, how much you apparently hate babies or want to kill all the babies in America. You're fine. I mean, yeah, sure, it's against Catholic principles and doctrine for the last 2,000 years, but you get a pass because you're the president, because presidents get a pass, right? Anyway, side issue. I have more to say about that, but I want to stick to the voting today. So, Glenn Youngkin defeated Terry McAuliffe, and this is a referendum on Biden, and that's the big deal here. It is a big deal to note because of its proximity to Washington D.C., because it has been such a blue state, because a Republican won. Period at all. I believe there is a wave, that's an overused term, but a wave of people who are beginning to stand up and say, no, we're not going to do this. We're not going to let you destroy not only our country, because I know this Christian nationalism or nationalism, American exceptionalism, all these terms get thrown around. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about morality and theology, because that's what we talk about here. I have the Bible next to me. I read it constantly. You should too. This is about morality. Regardless of the state that we're in, regardless of the country that we're in, we need to do the right thing because it's the right thing. That is actually what our founders knew. That's why they put certain things in place, because they knew to self-govern, you have to govern yourself. And we're not doing that. We're not governing ourselves. We're just saying, you be you, do whatever you want to do. It's no problem. It's fine. Even if you're, being sexually promiscuous in every single possible way imaginable, don't worry about it, because it doesn't affect anybody. It's not bad. No, it is. When you don't govern yourself, when you don't take care of yourself, when you don't do the right things yourself, there is no way then you can lean into the state, the community, the federal government and say, no, federal government, you should do the right thing, but I'm not doing the right thing. It just doesn't work that way. And again, many quotes that I could quote right now from our founders, that things like, to have a government, you have to be a moral people. To have a government, you have to have religious education. Many of the founders said things like that. I'm not going to get back into that today. But I believe this particular election is a referendum on the Biden administration and its escape from both morality and reality. All the things that we talk about before, that allowing people to pretend that they're other people or other genders is just not reality. And at some point, reality will assert itself. This is even beyond the Bible and scripture. Like, reality is real. Whether Newton got hit in the head by an apple or not, there is still gravity. There is still reality. You cannot escape it forever, regardless of what you say. And more, this is why language is so important, because more and more people are saying, or people are not allowing certain speech on social media and in the workplace, etc., because you have to deny reality to make these things true. I've been reading through 1984. It talks a lot about this. It's a great example of, if you push hard enough, you can make someone say and maybe even believe anything, but it's not real, and reality will always assert itself. So this is a really good thing for both Virginia and I think the nation. But there's more, and that's the thing that I wanted to talk about, because it is really a big deal. It's a big deal that not only the governor was elected as a Republican in Virginia, but in Virginia also the lieutenant governor is now a lady named Winsome Sears. She is also a Republican. You probably won't see this on the mainstream news, which is crazy. I even saw another story. I think it was on The Guardian, or it doesn't really matter. One of the just regular mainstream sites. And it had some Asian lady. Again, I hate using these terms. Can't we just be American? Apparently we can't. Her name was Wu, and I forget which state she won. It doesn't really matter, but they were so excited because she was Wu, a name like Wu, a person of color, and the first person of color to win. I think it was Ohio or something like that. Again, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter. Who you are is more important than what you look like. Why can we not get this straight? I'm not saying you don't have history. I'm not saying you don't have culture, but who you are inside, we used to know this as a country, and we definitely should have known this as believers. Who you are on the inside, your character matters so much more than what you look like. Read through James, read through Romans, read through any of the Pauline letters, read through Jesus in the Gospels. Who you are makes a big difference. But I love this, and not to use their own terms in their way. Lieutenant Governor was elected, Winsome Sears. She's a Republican, and she is an immigrant from Jamaica. Personally, I love Jamaica. I now have relatives that are from Jamaica, and I absolutely love it. 100% love it. So again, you probably won't hear this because she fits some of the boxes, like she's a woman and she's black, but she's a Republican, so she doesn't fit the other boxes. And this is the weird problem that they've gotten themselves into when they intersectionality everything. I just made up that word, but everything is about intersectionality. How many boxes you check with how many different oppressed groups you're in. She's in some of them, but then because she's in others, then it negates the others. You just turn into this whirlwind of impossibility. And again, non-reality that you just can't get out of, and it becomes dizzying if you as a person now can't step back and say, she is ostensibly, I don't know her, but I've just read about her, a fantastic person, just as a person. She's a veteran of the Marine Corps. Again, she is from Jamaica. She said she's living the American dream. She says, quote, "I am at a loss for words for the first time in my life," which just sounds amazing to me. I think I like her already. She goes on, quote, "I'm here because of you. I'm here because you voted for me. I'm here because you put your trust in me. That is the only reason I'm here." She continues on. I love this part. "I say to you, there are some who want to divide us, and we must not let that happen. They would like us to believe we are back in 1963 when my father came," again from Jamaica. "We can live wherever we want. We can eat wherever we want. We can own the water fountains. We have had a black president elected not once but twice, and here I am living proof." This is her words, not mine. "In case you haven't noticed, I am black, and I have been black all my life." That is what she says. You can go and read about her. She, from all I can read, is just incredible. She goes on for a long way in her speech. It is fantastic. And I think this is, again, people saying, oh, I'm going to get so canceled for this. I don't care what you look like. I care who you are. And this woman seems to be incredible. And I love that she has now been elected to be the lieutenant governor of Virginia, especially in light of all the things I told you about Blue Virginia and all these other things. And it doesn't even end there. It continues on that Jason Miyares, I don't know if I said that right, but was also elected as the Republican Attorney General. I'll stop at Virginia right now. I've gone longer than I wanted to on Virginia. There's a couple other places that I also want to get to because it is important to note some other places in the country. But again, just to recap, Virginia, huge wins all across the board, and not just because it's Republican, because ultimately I don't care if you're a Republican. What I care about is, do you believe in morality? And for me, do you believe in the Bible? Do you believe in God? And are you willing to stand up for things that are real, that are true, and that are valuable to society, rather than trying to deconstruct society, trying to demolish systems and organizations in society and not replace them with anything good, but replace them with more hate and division? That is what people now in America, through their votes, have said they don't want. And this is really, really good news. I'm going to continue on a couple more if you can hang with me. New Jersey, a place where, of course, we all want to go live. Just kidding. Haha. No, I'm sorry. A little spicy today. But New Jersey's also had a governor's race. as of right now, in all that I can find, it hasn't had a clear winner. But that's actually really good news. That's actually kind of amazing that it doesn't yet have a winner, because again, another blue state that should have been super blue. It shouldn't have even been close, and it should have been a blowout. But instead, as of I'm reading right here, right now, the lead is just 1,000 votes. 1,000. That's it. 1,000 votes. That's all. It shouldn't be close in a state like New Jersey, next to New York, in that in that area. It should have been a Democratic blowout, and it's not. And just the fact that it's not, whether he wins or not, I hope he does. The Republican candidate is Jack Ciattarelli. I hope he does. But even if he doesn't, this is another referendum on the fact that, and according to reports that I've read, the incumbent governor, the Democratic governor, is not, I'll say it this way, is not particularly well liked, and has done all kinds of crazy lockdown measures. And again, I escaped, I'll say, from California, apparently New Jersey, and we know New York, but New Jersey to a large degree as well has been one of those crazy states where you just can't do anything throughout this pandemic for what I would say is not really great or clear reasons. I'll leave it at that. So people are voting and saying, we don't want this kind of stuff anymore. And I think it is two things. I think it is a vote against these authoritarian policies, and I think it is a vote against the Biden administration saying, we don't want these far left ideology issues in our lives, in our schools, in our workplaces, in our homes. We don't want them. And people are voting. So again, even though the GOP candidate, Jack Ciattarelli, may not win, he may. But the fact that it's even close is a huge deal. And I want to do one more voting thing that I think is of significance, because it shows the same thing that I've been saying, but it's very poignant. And that is in Minneapolis. Minneapolis, by a 56% vote, the residents of Minneapolis voted not to remove the police department. I think this is a really big deal, and this may hit close to home for you, but this is a really big deal. This is the place where George Floyd was killed, and they wanted to replace the police department with, I'll read a couple of these, called a, quote, Department of Public Safety. This is supposed to be comprised of social workers, healthcare workers, and I don't even know what this is, but they said violence interrupters. Violence interrupters. I literally have no idea what that is. I thought that's what police were supposed to be, violence interrupters, which is why they show up and interrupt the violence that's happening. I have many police officer friends. I thought that's what they did. But now we have a new category of person who is not a police officer and apparently not armed. And again, I've had so many conversations with police officers. Personally, I've had conversations, plus articles that I've read. If you show up to a place where violence is happening and you are not armed, you are more likely to die, because that's what happens in a crazy mob or with a crazy situation where people are going crazy and they want to have, again, violence. We're talking about violence. That violence will go on to anyone who is in the area, anyone who wants to interrupt this, as apparently this new position says. Again, the thing to note here is the city where all of this whole rioting for the last year originated, presumably, they voted 56% to not get rid of the police department. This shows you that those people that are actually in the neighborhoods, the people that are really dealing with this, know that police, by and large, again, there are bad people in every profession. There just are. But by and large, police want to help. That's why they become police. Again, I know a lot of police officers, they're not all white. I hate using these terms that the left throws on us that are racial terms, because it shouldn't matter. Apparently it does. But I know police officers from many different backgrounds. I'll say it that way. They all wanted to be police officers because they wanted to make a difference, because they wanted to help. Again, sure, there are authoritarian people. There are people that abuse their power. Yes, 100%. We should rein them in. We can always do better. We can always do more. We can always have more training. I'm fine with all of those things. No problem. Let's talk about those things. But to say like this, this plan said to just remove the police department and replace it with healthcare workers, like that is a recipe for your city to burn down, like we've seen across the country for the last year. I mean, I don't know how you cannot see that. And the encouraging part of this vote is people do see that. Of course they see that. Yes, we can change things. We can make better. We can make things better. Of course, we can always do that. And I'm not against that. I'm not even against that conversation. Let's have that conversation. But to just eliminate it entirely and replace it with violence interrupters and social worker like that, the way to keep peace is to enforce peace in some way. And I'm not saying in an authoritarian way. I'm just saying historically, again, like long history, look at it. If you just allow a lawless society, you will get a lawless society. George Orwell, Animal Farm. Again, I talked about 1984 earlier, but Animal Farm is another good book that illustrates. Or Lord of the Flies, if you don't want to read Orwell. These books, of course, are fiction, but they illustrate a good point that when left to our own devices, we spiral down into craziness and end up killing each other. That's just what we do. That is human nature. I know there are people who would like to say that if the systems got out of the way, if they just left us alone, we would all live at peace. There would be rainbows everywhere. You would ride a unicorn around on golden streets. Unfortunately, the reality, both by watching Human Nature, which every psychologist can tell you, or by reading the words of God, which tell you, Romans, for instance, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And again, I could go on and on and on with verses there. We aren't going to choose the good naturally. We're just not, unless we have some sort of moral code that comes from outside of ourselves. We need that because we cannot do it on our own. That's what Jesus came to show us, not just tell us, but show us through his life, through his death, through his resurrection. And praise be to God, all grace to him for that. We give him glory. But we need to lean into that more. And I love seeing where people choose morality, choose the good over this crazy issue, ideological, cultural Marxism, humanist, secularist, all these words that I could throw at it. They're philosophical and some even theological words. We don't need to get into all of those today. I just want you to know that there is hope. I've never been worried or nervous. I have tried to give that to you. And also, it's not time to give up either. It's not time to sit back and say, job well done. We're good. Just relax. Now we can go back to watching football. No, we need to continue to push through our words, through our actions, again, peaceful actions, hear me correctly, for people to understand what the truth is. It's just so important to understand the truth because when we, as Solzhenitsyn says, live by lies, when we accept these lies that the left continuously pushes on us and we just go, it's not that big a lie, it's not that big a deal, we'll just let them have this one. No, it actually is a big deal. It actually destroys things. When you say the family can be defined as anything you want it to be defined as, you don't add to the definition of family. You destroy the definition of family, and then there is no family. And subsequently, we could talk about all of the different issues, and I won't right now. We just need to know that the truth is the truth, and we have to stand up for the truth, just as Jesus, who is the truth, stood up, lived, died for the truth. And then through his resurrection, we can have this new life that we can share with people because they need to know and they need to see us living differently. They need to see us living with joy, not with hate, not with anger, not with frustration, even though I admit I can be frustrated sometimes. We need to still live with the joy that we have in Christ because he has overcome the world. Jesus says you don't have to worry, but have courage. Take heart, he says. It's the same word as have courage. We can live by courage. We can live in boldness and not be authoritarian ourselves, but just be true with truth and grace, just like Jesus shows us. So thanks for being with me today. I hope this maybe is encouraging to you. I hope that you continue to seek after God, as Jesus says in Matthew 6:33, with all of your heart and mind and soul and strength, and know that as Jesus promises, everything else is going to be added to that when we get the priorities in the right order. That's what Jesus is talking about there. So God bless, and as always, keep the faith.